Okay, good afternoon and welcome everyone to this seminar today. Nice, lovely, sunny afternoon here in Marbella. And I'm going to introduce Paul. Paul Correa joins us from Gibraltar. Hello, Paul. How are you? Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, Alex. Thank you for inviting me to your webinar. It's always a pleasure to share a platform with you. So a very quick intro. We're a boutique wealth management practice which is dedicated to helping Brits and English-speaking expats achieve the financial goals of building, protecting, and managing their wealth. We've got we service three segments of the market: retirees, entrepreneurs, and internationally mobile senior executives. There's three markets that we service. That's the Iberian Peninsula, Europe, but mainly Spain and Portugal, the UK market, and then West Africa.
Excellent.
And in terms of professional connections, what makes us a bit quirky as a practice is that we are a member firm of MGI Worldwide, which is a top 20 ranked global accounting network of audit, tax, accounting, and consulting firms. MGI is the oldest professional network that I know of, represented by more than 10,000 professionals, 300 countries, 7 continents, with revenues fast approaching $1 billion.
Fantastic. So we're in good company, and today you're going to be talking about Gibraltarian residency, and I'm going to be talking about Spanish residency. And we'll probably be talking for about half an hour with questions backwards and forwards, which we've received from the public. And then we're going to have a poll, and then we'll open up for questions towards the end of the session. But you've been busy with your drone, so perhaps we should play that video.
If you are one of the many Britons or foreign nationals looking to establish a home in a new jurisdiction outside of your home country, you may well be tempted by what Gibraltar has to offer in terms of residency options. Located at the southern tip of Europe, with spectacular views across the straits to Africa, Gibraltar is a self-governing British overseas territory where English law, language and currency prevail. While Monaco and Switzerland are excellent choices for those seeking a lavish lifestyle, Gibraltar is best suited for individuals looking for a more discreet yet equally attractive fiscal regime. Gibraltar offers an excellent quality of life, a safe and secure environment, temperate climate, and access to all types of sports, leisure and cultural activities. Discover the benefits of taking up residency in Gibraltar. Speak to an expert today about your own specific requirements.
We've got another video, Ali. Do you think we'd be able to play that one, or?
If you've decided to move to Spain to live, work or retire, then we would be pleased to help you obtain your Spanish tax numbers, known as NIEs. We'll then assist you with the Spanish residency process wherever you are located in Spain. We've loaded this webpage with all the essential information and requirements necessary to help you apply for Spanish residency. Here at GetSpanishResidency.com, we have a multilingual team of professionals located across the country ready to help you apply for and obtain residency. So complete our online form today and we will contact you to start the Spanish residency process. If for whatever reason we cannot obtain your residency, then we will honour our money-back guarantee.
Okay, so Paul, starting off, have you experienced a surge in demand for Gibraltar residency applications after Brexit? And what's the procedure for someone to apply for a residency in Gibraltar?
Well, the short answer is that we have seen a massive increase in the number of inquiries, mainly from Brits living in Spain, but equally from those in the UK. And I think the interest we've had from Brits in Spain is a post-Brexit phenomenon. We're talking about people who have been living under the radar in Spain for many, many years, who are no longer tax residents in the UK either. So effectively, they are what we call tax nomads. But as you know, with common reporting standards, involving automatic exchange of financial information, a new EU directive, which the UK has embraced, although it's been watered down, called DAC 6, which seeks to address the worst and the most aggressive tax planning. There's nowhere to hide anymore. And I think people realize that you have to be tax resident and pay your taxes somewhere, right? That's a universally accepted standard nowadays. I think people in Spain with the second homes realize that the game is up and they need to rearrange their tax affairs. And Brexit has been that wake-up call. So I think that, and there's also Brits in the UK who wish to relocate for entirely different reasons. So I was referring earlier to the ones who are tax resident, who are in Spain, but below the radar. But equally, there's been Brits tax resident in the UK, and they have different reasons for wishing to relocate to Gibraltar. So we find them, they are the retirees looking for better quality of life in their sunset years. There's those that are seeking the lifestyle benefits, which you would have seen in the video, and greater tax efficiency. And then thirdly, there's the third group, which are entrepreneurs looking to redomicile their business to Gibraltar to maximize tax efficiency. Now, in answer to the second part of the question, which was how does someone obtain tax residency? There's various routes to residency, and it pretty much depends on whether the applicant is, and this is where we have to be clear, or whether the applicant is in receipt of passive income or earned income. And this will determine which residency route and which application to submit to the authorities. And the requirements will vary significantly. With self-sufficiency, if you're in receipt of passive income, the requirements are much less onerous than Cat 2. So you pay 0% tax on income, on interest payments and dividends from a recognized stock exchange, 0% capital gains tax, no inheritance tax in Gibraltar, but that comes with a caveat. And then if you draw pension income from a CUROPS, which is Gibraltar based, then you pay 2.5% tax on any pension drawdown. Potentially, and this, and I have to emphasize it, potentially, you could pay no tax in Gibraltar whatsoever, as long as you can demonstrate that you are self-sufficient, and it depends on your income streams, right? But potentially you could end up paying nothing. And so that's one route.
That, when you say self-sufficient, how much are you talking about?
No, there's no requirements. And I mean, self-sufficiency is just a label that has been applied, but self-sufficiency is no different to, my residency status with the difference that you have to demonstrate that, you've got private health cover, and you've got a property of a normal size. The requirements are not particularly strict, but then you have the category 2 individual, and those are more stringent. So you need to have a minimum net worth of 2 million. It has to be provable. You need to own an approved property. So these approved properties are normally higher value properties. It has to be sufficient and to be used exclusively by the applicant and the family, and of a sufficient size to meet the needs of the family. They need the private medical cover, and they can't have been resident in Gibraltar for 5 prior years.
Okay.
And you can't establish a business, a trade or employment which competes with local businesses. But then it caps
the quickest and easiest way into Gibraltar without the category 2 status. So you've got to own a property, you've got to have medical insurance in place. And do you have to earn a minimum income? Do you have to have a minimum wealth to get in there?
For category 2, you need to have a net worth of 2 million. With self-sufficiency, you don't. But clearly, you have to demonstrate that you're not a burden on the health system, on society. But it's very simple. And with Cat 2, to make it work, you have to have well in excess of 120 grand in earned income. But as we always say, the devil is in the detail, and each case is different. So Alex, having asked me that question, it's my turn to ask you, how does someone get Spanish residency?
Well, Spanish residency has become, for British people, it's become a little bit more complicated if they are not in Spain already. So So those people that can prove that they were resident in Spain or living in Spain before the 31st of December 2020 can still apply for residency, and we're active for clients in that respect. And then also anyone who is married to a family member who's got Spanish residency, then we can apply for their residency as well. But for all those new applicants, they've got to apply now to the Spanish consulate in their home country. So the UK now is being treated as a third country, so a non-European country, which of course we now are. And applicants, if they want to get Spanish residency, they have to apply that from the Spanish consul in their home country.
Wow.
So, I mean, just before Brexit actually happened, Gibraltar was in the news quite a lot about a double taxation agreement with Spain. What was that all about? Did it happen?
Yeah. Well, it has, but it hasn't been ratified. I mean, basically, that double taxation agreement is connected to I think to the post-Brexit agreement. Yeah. So it hasn't been ratified yet, but it was signed in. You're right, in March 2019. I see it more as a statement of goodwill, political goodwill in the field of taxation, than an internationally recognized DTA standard in OECD model form, because, you know, it's more than a sweetener to guarantee cross-border fluidity on post-Brexit. It doesn't follow the typical double taxation agreement, which is a standard form. The same text appears. You just change the countries, and the agreements are virtually the same. But this one, the format is completely different. So what it does is, what this agreement does, it makes it very, very hard for anyone. This double taxation agreement, which has to be ratified, it makes it very hard for anyone to try and pretend to be tax resident in Gibraltar and then actually be living across the border in Spain, which, you know, it does happen. I think the rules surrounding what constitutes Spanish tax residency in this double taxation agreement have been tightened and clarified, much more so than what you would have, you know, if you go into, you know, the typical rules. Yeah, 183 days, your center of economic and vital interest. This is much more well defined. So if you're a Spanish national, for instance, in the agreement, and you try to move to Gibraltar, you can't. If you try and do it post March 2019, you can't do it. You can't change your Spanish tax residency. So Spanish nationals saying, I want to move to Gibraltar to change my tax residency, you can certainly move. But for taxation, you will always be deemed to be tax resident in Spain. Right. So that's how it works. Now, academics on both sides of the border have argued on the legal issues, and they both feel that this agreement could, in theory, be challenged. But, you know, whether it's ever challenged or not remains to be seen. Now, it talks about Spanish nationals, because clearly what they don't want is to see 10,000 Spanish nationals establish their tax residency in Gibraltar and, you know, less tax revenues and so on. So they're very strict on Spanish nationals, but equally on non-Spanish nationals who have been tax resident in Spain for over a year would continue to be tax resident in Spain for a further 4 years after they've left Spain for Gibraltar. So, Alex, you decide, you know, tomorrow to become tax resident in Gib, notwithstanding the fact that you are observing all the rules of tax residency both in Spain and Gib, you will still be taxable in Spain for a further 4 years. Yeah. And that is not it. You know, there's the administration corporation on tax matters, which is, believe it or not, it's exchange of information, whether it's automatic, spontaneous, or upon request. It includes joint controls and participation in tax examinations abroad. It involves liaison bodies on both sides of the border, exchanging information on individuals, on companies, on assets such as boats, cars, aircrafts, which are registered in Gibraltar but owned by Spanish tax residents. So no, it's quite a strict agreement, and I have no doubt that if this treaty goes ahead, which I'll cover later, then this double taxation agreement will come into play immediately.
Well, I mean, it's good news, Paul, that there's taxation agreement there ready to put into implementation. But obviously, bad news that I can't move over to Gibraltar and pay less tax than I pay tax in Spain.
Exactly. So one question for you. What's the main difference, Alex, between, and I'm quite curious, what's the main difference between golden visa and the non-lucrative visa? What are the subtle differences?
So essentially now, British people who aren't resident in Spain or here already haven't applied for residency. You've got two main options, apart from work visas and student visas, etc. But those visas are the golden visa, when they buy a property for more than 500,000 euros, or a series of properties in excess of 500,000 euros. And those properties, they could have purchased them. They could have purchased them from the September 2013 to up until now. So we can still use those properties to apply for the golden visa. And the non-lucrative visa, in effect, what people have to do then for the non-lucrative visa is prove that, for example, that the main applicant has a sum of money in his account or her account of 27,115 euros. And then if they've got dependents, 6,778 euros each. So typically for a family of four wishing to move to Spain now, they apply for the non-lucrative visa at the consul in their home country, and they've got to have 47,451 euros in their bank account. And they'll receive a visa for a year for the non-lucrative visa. If they apply for the golden visa in their home country as well, that also lasts for a year, and then they can renew that for 2 years. And the main differences are that the non-lucrative visa, you're just coming here to reside, you cannot work, whereas the golden visa, you can actually work in Spain with it. And if you applied, you can also apply, come to Spain, buy a property for 500,000 euros and apply for the golden visa here. And I'd actually recommend that, because the visa that's issued is for 2 years rather than 1 year if you're applying for that in your home country. And it's not just 500,000 euros in property. You can also deposit up to a million euros plus into a bank account, or buy public debt of 2 million, or also buy shares in companies of up to 1 million. But generally speaking, we've acted for clients applying for the golden visa because they bought properties over the value of 500,000. We've also acted for clients who are just coming here to retire. We've acted for a lot of non-Europeans applying for non-lucrative visas over the last few years. And now we're seeing a steady trickle of British people coming in and applying for that non-lucrative visa.
So, sorry, Alex, just a follow-up question on that. Do they pay with a golden visa? Do they pay tax on the worldwide income, or how does it work?
Well,
or is it capped?
That's a good point. No, in effect, for either of those visas, you don't have to become a resident. So you can reside, and you've got the freedom to move and live in Spain. But as you know, Paul, if you spend more than 183 days in Spain in a calendar year, because the tax year here in Spain runs from January to December, which is very logical, of course. If you're in Spain for more than 183 days, then you're treated as a Spanish tax resident. So yes, a person who'd got a golden visa, spent more than 183 days here, would be taxed in Spain on worldwide assets and income, and that goes to the same for the non-lucrative visa. What we're finding is, yeah, some people are retiring here with those visas, some aren't. They're just spending less than 183 days here.
But does that mean that they could potentially be tax resident in a third country, and they just want the visa for freedom of movement within Schengen? Or
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah. And so talking of Schengen, you mentioned Schengen. It's a great thing concept to talk about. Again, before Brexit and after Brexit, there was a lot of concern on the Rock about whether or not the goods would flow freely, services, people would be allowed in and out. You've got a lot of Spaniards traveling in and out. Tell us about the kind of post-Brexit treaty that the UK, EU, and GIB are putting together or talking about.
Well, they agreed something in principle at the last second of the last minute of the last hour of the year, right?
Yeah.
And they made a press conference and they disclosed that they had an agreement in principle yet to be ratified. But it's an agreement which has been agreed by Gibraltar, UK and Spain. Then the EU needs to give it the green light, and then they have to draft the treaty. But the way I see it, this treaty is about granting Spanish workers a right to continue employment in Gibraltar. Gibraltar's economy contributes to 25% of GDP in the hinterland. So it's direct employment and indirect. So having access to the Gibraltar market for employment was very important for Spain in these times where there's so much economic uncertainty with the pandemic and slow growth. And I've always seen it as a quid pro quo, access to the Gibraltar market for employment in return for Gibraltar joining Schengen and free travel. And I think it's very exciting news on a number of fronts. And let me explain why I think it's so positive. First, I think we will enjoy greater border fluidity. And what's particularly strange is that we're going to enjoy more fluidity now than we had when we were members of the EU as part of the UK, right? We joined in 73 as an associate member through the UK, and we've always had trouble at that border, as you know. But I think it's almost they've demolished the physical border, metaphorically speaking. That's how I see it. There'll still be that border, but they are demolishing it and giving us that greater fluidity. So it's visa-free travel, potentially no queues, which is, I think, great news for business generally. A UK national living in Gibraltar would enjoy visa-free travel within the Schengen area. A UK national flying into Gib en route to Spain would then be treated at that land border as a third country national and would have to queue up. So living in Gibraltar gives you that possibility. You're a Brit, you're still in the British territory, but you've got access to Schengen area. So I think this will make Gibraltar much more attractive as a business center in the time to come and moving forward. But the other thing to consider is that they want to create an area of shared prosperity. So Gibraltar has the financial muscle, it's a British financial center and, the entrepreneurial spirit and so on. Spain has the land, the land and a lot of, and the workforce. So by creating this share of economic prosperity and giving perhaps across the border some kind of fiscal incentives for business setting up in a common zone by the border, I think that could be a catalyst for growth in the region as a whole. So it has to be viewed extremely positively. And then, of course, there's a free movement of people and potentially yet to be agreed goods. So I think that is really, really positive from a business point of view.
Paul, that sounds very, very exciting because I think having free travel between Spain and Gib with as far as flow of people is concerned, goods and services, that would be even better. And having like you said, Spain having the space, there's plenty of space there in La Linea, and it's kind of quite a relatively impoverished area. So to bring that Gibraltar financial muscle and prosperity out to Spain would create a lot of jobs and could be really quite interesting. If you mentioned Brits having, would have to queue up as a third-party national if they didn't have a visa, but also if they didn't have the residency. So if they had Spanish residency, they should kind of, which is now the new TIE card, they should just they should be able to, I'm hoping, just jump into the fast queue when they come through.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, Gibraltar is not unique in that sense, but I just mentioned in passing, it would be exactly the same. Once you're residing in a Schengen country, you can travel freely within Schengen, but I don't think you have the right to establish abode in a third, in another EU country. You haven't got the same rights as we had before, right?
Yeah.
But at least it gives you the Schengen free travel.
Yeah, so if someone's got a Spanish residency, they can actually spend 3 months in a Schengen country.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct.
So that, again, having that Spanish residency or the Gibraltar residency will allow you visa-free travel through the Gib airport. Yeah. Okay, cool.
One question, Alex, talking about, treaties and tax and so on. Why is tax planning so important when moving to Spain?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's really important when someone's moving to Spain. Most of the people we're acting for are coming here to live or to buy a second home. And if they're buying a second home, and it is going to be a second home for family use and for family holidays, then there's a great opportunity at that time to say, okay, right, mum and dad in their 60s, got some money behind them, enough to buy a property. They don't want to live in Spain, but they want to spend more time in Spain. So they could buy a property with their children if they've got children over the age of 18. So, for example, we've acted with clients recently. Mum and dad they had a life interest in the property, but the children had the legal title. And that has a double positive effect, so to speak, because basically the mum and dad were reducing their inheritance tax liability in the UK by the value of their investment, and the children become the legal title owners, so that when their parents pass on in Spain, in effect there'll be no inheritance tax. So it's a win-win from UK inheritance tax and also from Spanish inheritance tax. So, but that only really, again, it's each person's circumstances have to be considered, taken into account. So if any of those children didn't have a property in the UK, that might not work for them because Spain would be considered their main residence. But that's a great opportunity for someone to buy a property and reduce their inheritance tax. If they're moving out to Spain, though, to live and to become a resident, then I'd always recommend that they actually buy the property in their own names and put in place Spanish wills. And of course, in Spain, what we've got, unlike the UK and other countries, we've got 17 autonomous regions, and each of them have their own inheritance taxes. So if you have a look if you go onto our sister website, which is inheritingSpanishAssets.com, we've got the tax tables there for all the most important areas in Spain. And tax allowances on inheritance tax vary. So in Andalusia, blood relatives can inherit up to €1 million, whereas in, for example, the Costa Blanca, Valencian region, very popular with Brits, blood relatives can only inherit up to €100,000. And Spain does treat, as far as tax is concerned, non-blood relatives, unmarried spouses, much more harshly when it comes to inheritance tax. So when someone's thinking about moving to Spain, or even thinking about moving to Gibraltar, I think it's very important that you kind of sit back and just discuss who's going to own that property, which basically who's paying for it. That person then owns it or not. We consider the children coming onto the title, and just stepping back and just planning it through, because it can save a lot of inheritance tax further down the line. And I had a client recently contact me before Christmas. They bought a second property in Spain, and he said, "Oh, we'll just buy it in my name." I said, "Why are you going to do that?" He said, "Because we bought the first one in my name." And I said, "Again, why did you do that?" He said, "Well, I was just here at the time." And I said, "Are you married?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you trust your wife? You've been married for a long time?" He said, "Yeah, they've been married for 25 plus years." I said, "Well, if you buy it in her name, then you can split the inheritance tax liability down the middle straight away." So simple things just to be considered up front. We talked about Spain and obviously a great country to live in and to retire. What about Gibraltar then, Paul? Why? Give me, for example, 3 reasons why Brits would choose to relocate to Gibraltar.
I think 1 is better quality of life and a safe environment. 2, it's a British territory, and I think this one is particularly important. It's a British territory where the certainty of English law applies, and of course the same language, and we're still sterling based, the same currency. So that it's familiarity with being abroad, but still with some ties to the mother country. And then it's a very stable economy with a very benign tax environment, which provides fantastic tax planning opportunities for individuals, where they've got to their sunset years and they want to make their pension and investment assets stretch as much as they can, and they want to enjoy their life. You asked me before, Alex, whether we experience a surge in demand. So I'm going to turn it around now. And have you experienced a surge in demand for Spanish residency applications before Brexit? And
Yeah.
what about now post-Brexit?
Yeah, I mean, 2020 was basically a crazy year as far as residency applications were concerned. We were getting clients coming out. They found a property on the internet. We had for clients buying, selling, and inheriting property all over Spain. So some clients contacted us. We put powers of attorney in place, so we could open a bank account for them, apply for their NIEs. They found a property online, came out, viewed it, said, yeah, we want it, and a week later we'd purchase the property. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but they were desperate to buy. All the paperwork was generally speaking in order, which was good. We had time to review the paperwork before they actually decided, lock, stock, and barrel to buy it, and prepare our legal report. But yeah, so it was crazy. It was crazy with applications for residency and Brits wanting to complete the property purchases before the end of the year. But
is that to preserve some residency rights? Is that the underlying issue, or the motivation?
They wanted to. Some people basically bought the property and stayed and haven't gone back. So we're acting for them now in that continued residency process. It's a 3-stage process. If you were here before December, so in effect, we collate the documents. You've got to prove that you've got sufficient income to live on. You've got UK bank accounts or Spanish bank accounts be used for that perspective. That you're registered on the Padron, which is the local census at the town hall. You've got medical cover in place, and you own or rent a property. So those documents together, we'd submit those online. You'd receive the approval back. Obviously not instantly, but depending on the area, it could come back within 3 days or 3 months. We get the approval, and then clients have to go down to the police station, take a passport photo with them, and have their fingerprints taken. So that process is still continuing, because we submitted a lot of residency applications before the end of the year, and now we're just looking to get the appointments. And of course, a lot of people who are here already, they might have a green card, a green residency card, which used to be A4 size and then became a credit card size. They can now swap that for the TIE card, which is the new card which is being issued to all British residents, which is a photographic biometric card, which I've got my own, which is great. So you don't have to carry your passport around anymore in Spain. That biometric card is sufficient for identification purposes. To take to the supermarket and prove that you are who you are when you pay your supermarket bill. So that was good. And then after Brexit, we've had the requirements are, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to apply for the non-lucrative visa either in your home country, or you go for the golden visa, and it just makes it a little bit more difficult. Whereas people would come out here before and apply for the residency, and they could stay here. Now the biggest change is that they can only stay for 90 days in a 180-day period in Spain. And those people who own a property, if they rent it out now, they, instead of paying 19% tax on the income, they now pay 24% tax, and they can't deduct any of the costs. So these are little kind of niggles and teething problems. And I'm hoping that once COVID and the pandemic settles down, and the frustration of Brits applying for residency and the rigmaroles and requirements that are being implemented at the moment, hopefully there might be a bit more flexibility, because Spaniards going to the UK can go to the UK and spend 180 days in the UK without applying for residency, and they don't need a visa. Yeah?
But my personal opinion, Alex, is that the Europeans are trying to do as much as they can to make it as difficult as they can, because remember, they don't want other EU countries to follow suit and leave the EU. So if you look at Calais, and I'll give you a practical example. Supplies of products from Waitrose into Gibraltar, if you go to the supermarkets, the stands are empty. And that's because they're finding it extremely difficult to get those goods across, you know, across the channel and through France.
Yeah.
And we've got a trade deal in place, but notwithstanding that, it's been made as difficult and as awkward as they possibly can.
No, I agree with
So
you.
I think, you know, in so many different areas, I think Michel Barnier came out yesterday saying that, you know, an area that concerns me the most, which is access to the single market in financial services, saying we're in no rush to grant the UK access to the single market. When they had an agreement in principle, they're going to create a regulatory framework and we're going to grant them equivalence rights. So the UK has extended equivalence rights to all 27 EU states, but it hasn't been a reciprocal arrangement. And the EU is now stalling. So at every opportunity, it will be awkward and difficult, because they have to show that it's if you decide to leave the club, then there's pain. It's simple as that.
Yeah, I felt that personally when I went down to Iceland and some of the shops were, some of the shelves were empty.
Yeah.
I had a request for crisps for my daughter. No crisps at all, and no decaf tea bags either. So a real uproar. If they don't get it sorted, I'll be calling Michel Barnier myself.
Exactly.
So I talked about tax planning. Why? You know, bear in mind you've talked about there's virtually no tax payable in Gibraltar if you become a resident here. Why is tax planning important if you did take out residency?
Well, I said that in specific situations, potentially you could pay no tax, which is entirely true. For example, dividends from the UK, if you're a Gibraltar tax resident, you don't pay in the UK, nor do you pay in Gib. And of course, if your income is all passive income from dividends and interest and investments, and there's no capital gains, then in theory you could pay absolutely no tax. But the notion that you know, that there's no tax to pay in Gibraltar, I think it's a common pitfall for the unsuspecting Brit or foreign national establishing their residence here is not entirely correct, because for instance, you're quite right, there's no inheritance tax to pay in Gibraltar. However, for Brits, UK IHT is based on the principle of domicile rather than residency, and domicile is not something you can shed very easily. But the good thing is, so therefore you remain effectively, you come to Gibraltar, there's no inheritance tax in Gibraltar, you've got an estate of 5 million, and you go, fantastic. You know, you're rubbing your hands, no inheritance tax to pay, but in actual fact, you're still exposed to UK IHT. Now, being an expat in Gibraltar or any other country, but Gibraltar offers fantastic opportunities for tax planning, which could potentially mitigate, and in certain cases, clearly it's case dependent. And based on the value of the UK estate, but it is possible to eradicate completely the UK tax inheritance tax liability. So, you know, no, it's not completely tax-free for most people, but the common misconception is for Brits is I come here and there's no inheritance, and they have to be very mindful of the fact that, you know, UK inheritance tax is based on domicile, not on tax residency.
Yeah.
So, Alex, you've been living in Spain for how many years?
Well, I've been in now nearly 30 years, Paul.
You've gone native now, no?
Well, as you can detect from my accent, I don't speak English with a Spanish accent, but I do speak Spanish with a little bit of an English accent. So it's my upbringing. So yeah, no, you know, nearly 30 glorious years. You know, I love Spain. I love the UK as well. I love going back to the UK. I haven't been back for like a year now. So missing friends and relatives there. But yeah, I mean,
so what do you love? What do you love about Spain?
Well, I mean, you know, first of all, the weather. It's beautiful weather out there today. 20 degrees in February. Blue sky, sunshine. Amazing. The weather's good. The food is good. Wine's good. People are good. And I love the country as well. Different regions with different areas, different cultures. Yeah, there's a lot to love about Spain.
But you're quite right. I mean, if you look at the UK, you have different regions with different accents, but the culture is pretty much the same or similar. But in Spain, every region is almost a country in its own right. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to be careful there. You might be treading on delicate toes if you've got Devonians and Yorkshiremen on the line. But let's
Okay.
crack on.
Yeah.
Okay, to qualify for residency in Gibraltar, is it true you don't have to live in Gibraltar for any length of time?
Well, that's another common pitfall that one needs to avoid. In theory, you don't have to spend, well, let's distinguish between self-sufficiency and Cat 2 status. Cat 2 is the higher status, yeah? The one where you pay a fixed amount of tax on your worldwide income, but there are more onerous conditions tied to Cat 2 residency. But in theory, you're right. For Cat 2, you don't have to spend any length of time in Gibraltar if you follow the rules strictly. However, and I would like to bold and underline, you do need to spend a minimum of 100 days in 3 consecutive tax years to be deemed ordinarily resident. Now, being ordinarily resident doesn't shield you or protect you from triggering tax residency in the third country, right? You spend 100 days in Gib and you rub your hands and say, and think, right, I'm off across the border to my chalet in Sotogrande or Sagaleta and everything is fine, right? It's not. You're still bound by Spanish rules on 183 days, Center of Economic and Vital Interest and so forth. So you could potentially think you are protected from, because you've got your residence certificate, you spend 100 days, but trigger residency in Spain, or for that matter, in the UK. And as you know, in Spain, it's very clear, 183 days, Centre of Economic and Vital Interest. In the UK, it's governed by the UK Statutory Residency Test 2013, which is based on the number of ties you retain with your mother country. And that determines effectively how many days you can trip over to UK. And if you exceed that, then you trigger residency. In theory, you could have a Gibraltar residency card on a Cat 2 status, spend more than 183 days in Spain and be challenged on that, and exceed the number of days based on your ties in the UK and be challenged in the UK. So, you know, it doesn't offer you, global protection from residency. So 100 days is the minimum to qualify in Gibraltar for ordinary resident. Now, for Cat 2, it's silent. You don't have to spend any days, but you know that in theory doesn't work anywhere. So in answer to your question, again, tread very carefully, seek the advice of professionals, because making a mistake in this area can prove very costly. And certainly the one thing I'd like to emphasize, because I'm very wary of the fact that it happens a lot with people in Brits, in particularly in Gib and Spain, right? They come over and we push them away now because there's reputational risk issues, but they come and they want a brass plate address, and that doesn't work anymore. There's inspectors coming out and making sure that people are legitimately and they're living in the territory, and this new double taxation agreement where there's cooperation on both sides and joint controls, you can't get away with that, the brass plate address, but living in your chalet, in your villa in Sotogrande.
Yeah.
Those days are long gone. So Alex, when do you become a tax resident in Spain?
Basically, Paul, when you spend more than 183 days in a calendar year in Spain, that's when you become a Spanish tax resident. Also, if Spain is the centre of your economic interest, or your spouse and children live in Spain, that could also bring you into to Spanish tax residency. So again, it is quite important if you're traveling backwards and forwards and you have got children here and you don't want to be a Spanish tax resident, keep an eye on that 183 days, but also take steps to clearly distinguish that you may be family tax residents, but you might not be, and that we can assist with that. We're coming towards the end. We've got a couple of last questions, and then we're going to open up the forum. And I've got another one for you, Paul. What about entrepreneurs? What do they stand to gain from establishing their tax residency in Gibraltar, and what other tax benefits are there?
Yeah, I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can due to time, but I think that's a really good question. By redomiciling the UK businesses to Gibraltar from another third country and setting up the businesses locally, the advantages can be quite substantial. One, a lower rate of tax on income. It peaks at 28. The average is 25. But Gibraltar has a very quirky taxation system. It's almost like a bell. It's, you know, tax rates are in most countries are progressive. Gibraltar has a progressive tax rate, and it peaks at 28, and then it becomes regressive. That's why it's like a bell. And if you're earning, you know, amounts of over $500,000 into the 1 million, it starts going down to about 5% tax. But it's not on the total. It's by band. But it is a regressive taxation system. Quite interesting. I haven't seen anything like it any place besides Gibraltar. And then, of course, lower social insurance contributions by employers. So it's, you know, if you have many you're redomiciling your company, moving 20 employees across, there's some savings on employer social insurance contributions. And then, of course, the lower corporate tax rate, which is 10%, which I think makes Gibraltar quite an attractive financial center for redomiciling businesses. But I don't think that's all. There's other tax benefits. And one in particular, which I think people don't realize, if you exit the UK, sever your UK tax residency, you do it formally and properly, and become tax resident in Gibraltar, and then you've got a very successful business in the UK, a going concern, right, with a good, in fact, I had one recently, and the business is valued at £10 million, I think, and the guy's applying for Gibraltar residency. His business is still going on. What they can do effectively, once they become Gibraltar tax resident, they can dispose of their business, sell it, with no UK capital gains tax liability. The only condition attached to that is that they have to remain outside of the UK for 5 complete years following the sale of the business. But if you think about it, you're planning to sell your business, you exit the UK, you come to Gibraltar. Gibraltar has no Gibraltar has no capital gains tax, but the UK doesn't apply capital gains tax either if you remain outside the UK for 5 years. So that's a massive tax saving for entrepreneurs thinking of disposing of their property within a reasonable period of time.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay.
So Alex, one final question for you.
Yeah.
I know you want to end, but I'll be very quick. How long does the property purchase process take in Spain, and how can someone obtain a mortgage in Spain?
Okay, so yeah, we ask for clients buying property all over Spain, and some people do have businesses in Spain and Gibraltar and live in either jurisdictions, and that of course is allowed. And depending on where you spend most time, that you'd either be Gibraltar resident or Spanish resident. But a lot of Gibraltarians have Spanish properties, and a lot of people seeking residence in Gibraltar have Spanish properties. So yeah, we can help with the property purchase. By and large, a property purchase in Spain tends to take between 4 and 12 weeks. 12 weeks if you're applying for a mortgage. As a result of Brexit, banks here are lending up to 60% of the value of the property. And just to add on the gold visa, you can't have a mortgage on the property. The investment has to be for €500,000 plus. So a mortgage wouldn't do. But yeah, mortgages are still can be obtained, and yeah, we're active with clients at the moment who are applying for mortgages. Yeah.
Have you found that if the individual is buying a property in Spain but derives his income from Gibraltar, that banks have become a bit more stringent in terms of the lending conditions, or
we haven't had one of those. We haven't had that specific example at the moment, Paul. But as long as they've got a contract in place and they've got, if you're talking about borrowing 60% from the bank, that means you obviously got 40% to put down as a deposit, and then on top of that, you've got the purchase costs, which in Spain could be 12-13%. So you're talking that you've got a deposit of at least kind of 52-53%. So it's a lot as a healthier deposit, and really the banks are quite comfortable with that because there's reduced lending risk. So we're not finding any problems with banks agreeing to that, but we're finding more problems with applicants not having quite enough money in their box to, their piggy bank to put down a deposit. Okay, so we've covered kind of Gibraltar residents and Spanish residents. I hope you kind of enjoyed that. We're going to open up for questions. We've got a few questions coming in from now. Whoever does ask a question, we're going to publish this on social media afterwards. So Ali, if you could open up for questions now. But as I said, if by participating and asking the question, I hope you don't mind that we then share this later on our YouTube channels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Maggie.
Hi, Maggie.
Thank you for all the valuable tips. So I do have 3 questions, and it's kind of very specific. So I am British by naturalization, and my partner, who is Spanish, is applying for a British passport. We're planning to move to Spain probably end of the year, or maybe beginning of the next year. And there's 3 things. So is it possible to have a remote business registered in UK but live in Spain and pay taxes in the UK? Or would it need to be a LTD company, so I would be like an employee of myself?
Yeah. So you've got a British passport and your partner is Spanish, yeah?
Yes, and he will also have the British passport. He's just applying now.
And are you married?
No.
No. Okay. Right. So if you move to Spain, then at the moment, if you move to Spain, then you'd have to apply for the non-lucrative visa or the golden visa. Okay.
Sorry, one thing I need to mention, that I am Polish.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got your Polish passport. So as a Polish passport carrier, you can come to Spain and you can apply for residency, and the rules from last year apply. So in effect, you've got to have, depending on the area in Spain, between 6,000 and 9,000 euros in a bank account, and you've got to show income of 850 euros, and you have to have private medical insurance in place, along with proof of ownership of a property or rental of a property of at least 6 months, and you register on the padron, which is the census. So you get those documents together, you can apply for residency. You can, of course, you can then work from Spain, and your business will, if it's a registered business, say a limited company in the UK, then the business will pay tax in the UK on the income that it generates. And then if you receive an income from that, because you're living in Spain and you've been here for more than 6 months, then you pay tax in Spain on that income, and you'd have to declare that. If it's a salary, if you're a salaried, then you declare that the year after your arrival, between April and June. And if you were self-employed, so you were invoicing the company, so lots of our clients actually set up a business and they have a limited company, and they then invoice the companies that they're self-employed. They then would submit those tax returns and VAT returns, EVA returns, on a quarterly basis.
But in Spain, not in UK.
In Spain, yeah. Because
Right,
if you're living in Spain, you're a tax resident in Spain, you've got to declare all income in Spain.
So there is really no point to actually have the business in UK. It's better to have everything in Spain then.
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends. Having a limited company does afford you protection. So there's advantages of having a limited company. It depends also where your clients are, because the limited company, if your clients are in the UK, then you can invoice them from the limited company. That will give them comfort. But yeah, I mean, I think you've just got to look at all options. Where are you going to be living? Yeah.
Yeah, we were considering if it's better to then register in Gibraltar and then basically live in Spain, which we kind of looking at as well. So
the same principle applies, yeah.
Right.
You're a tax resident in Spain, so you pay tax in the country where you are
right. Okay.
tax resident.
And another thing,
I mean, the only advantage is that maybe the corporate tax rate on that business would be lower than Spain. But
right.
in terms of taxation, you pay in Spain, regardless of whether the business is in the UK, Spain, or Gibraltar.
Yeah.
Okay. And one more thing, basically, it's if we have the British passport by naturalization, in order to renew the passport, do we need to own the property or do we need to have a registered address in UK to be able to renew the British passport?
No. Well, I mean, I renewed my passport recently, and if you've got a foreign address, you can do that. Yes, it's not a problem.
Oh, okay.
You can renew the passport. Yeah. So, is that okay, Maggie?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your questions. Just before we go to the next question, I'd just like to carry out a poll. So I'm going to ask Ali to publish that poll, and if you can just take a few seconds to respond to those. So, are you thinking about moving to Spain? Are you thinking about moving to Gibraltar? And then further down, we've got, would you like to receive updates from legal services in Spain about residency, legal news and information? And would you like to receive updates from Fiduciary Wealth Management about investments or moving to Gibraltar? So just click on all of those. Okay, and it's interesting to see, basically, a third of you are here, a third of you don't want to come to Spain, and a third are here already, a third don't want to come, and a third definitely do want to come. So we look forward to seeing you in Spain soon. And then in Gibraltar, 30% are thinking about moving to Gibraltar, 60% not, sorry about that, Paul, and 6% are already here. I hope that's not you and your people in the office voting for that one, eh? And then thank you. Basically, we'll be delighted to kind of send you further information about the seminar and further seminars that we follow up with. And of course, if you visit our YouTube channels, so Legal Services in Spain and for Fiduciary Wealth Management in Spain, go onto YouTube. You'll be able to see this recorded video after. So I'm ending that now, and I'll just share those results there with you. While you're digesting that. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've been unmuted. So I've got questions, Alex, for both you and for Paul. So if I fire them all off, and I'll ask Paul first, and then Alex, there's quite a few points of just clarification I wanted to say. Alex, about the £500,000 spend on property to get the golden visa. I think you said you don't need a mortgage, whereas in Portugal you wouldn't. So I'm just firing them off now in case you need to check anything.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify the year that you said that would still be valid for the golden visa if you'd already.
Yeah, that's September 2013 onwards.
September 2013 onwards. Okay. And then I think you said that the tax now for Brits goes up from 19%, did you say, to 23% income tax?
That's 24% on non-residence income tax. So if someone buys a Spanish property, a British person buys a Spanish property, the year after they purchase, they submit on an annual basis the non-residence income tax, and basically that used to be 19%, and now it's gone up to 24%.
Okay, and is that because of the third country status?
Yes.
For Brits, and has it had the same effect on other taxes because we've
no.
UK's
No.
just for income tax?
Yeah, just the non-residence income tax at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, so you do need a mortgage on the £500,000, 19 to 24.
No, Louise, when you on the golden visa, you've got to buy a property of 500k plus, and there can be no mortgage on that.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, no mortgage. Whereas in a country like Portugal, I think you can do a similar thing, but I think you can have a mortgage on that.
I don't know.
In other countries anyway. And do you coordinate, Alex, with your service, helping people get residency or a golden visa at the same time that someone's purchasing? Because again, the whole thing has to be really tightly coordinated and can cause. I mean,
yeah, we do, and it's a really good point because actually, so we had clients from the Middle East recently. We signed the power. We met them in Spain. We signed the power of attorney. We included in that power of attorney the faculty to apply for their visa, which we did. So we submitted it online and we got their visa. And then of course they had to go along in person to get that. So they got the approval for the golden visa, and then along with the non-lucrative visa and the golden visa, when people come into Spain, we have to apply for their TIE card, which is the foreigner's card. And when they've arrived in Spain, they've got 30 days to apply for that. So that's kind of quite an important point. So yes, we actually coordinate everything. So coming into Spain, putting the power of attorney in place, buying the property, applying for the visa, accompanying them to get their residency card.
Can you get to the situation where someone's buying this property because they want the golden visa and then they don't actually end up getting the visa, and because it just makes the whole process a bit more complicated, doesn't it? The whole buying.
We haven't had that situation. It's something, as long as you invest 500,000 and you've got sufficient money in your bank account, so to prove that you can live in Spain and you've got medical cover, you'll get the visa. So generally speaking, that's something we, again, right up front, we would discuss with clients.
Okay, and then is there a wealth tax in Spain?
Yeah, so that's quite important to bear in mind. And again, the wealth tax varies from region to region. But for example, in Andalusia, if you've got a property, the wealth tax for non-residents is 700,000. So anything over 700,000, you then start to pay tax, and residents have got an extra, they've got 700,000 plus an extra 300,000. They in effect have got wealth tax allowances of €1 million, and that's per person.
Okay, and then what is the wealth tax rate?
It goes up on a sliding scale. So depending on the region, it starts off at 0.1 and goes up to 3.5%.
Okay, wow, okay.
And that's payable on an annual basis, yeah.
Okay, so thanks very much for that, Alex. And it was a great, very informative webinar, so that was great. Paul, it sounds as though Gibraltar's ended up in a much better position than Ireland, Northern Ireland and Ireland. And at the outset, there was a lot of furore about the situation with Gibraltar, and the UK was abandoning Gibraltar and it was going to be a nightmare. From what you're saying, it sounds quite positive, and it sounds as though Gibraltar has come out of this in a much better situation if the border's opening up and Spain is being more cooperative. Absolutely.
I think the news headlines that Britain did nothing for Gibraltar. I think they've been we've been working hand in glove with the UK government to try and secure a deal. So I think, in fairness to Boris Johnson, think what you wish, but no, they've been supportive. Gibraltar has been driving the initiative of trying to secure or to obtain access to Schengen, notwithstanding the fact that we were exiting the EU, and the UK government has been hugely supportive and helped in secure that deal. Yet to be ratified, but you're absolutely right, Louise. We will be in a much stronger position once that treaty is ratified. Much stronger. Clearly, that's partly because we had a socialist government which is more amenable to having sensible discussions about, cooperation than perhaps an extreme right-wing government in Spain. But no, I mean, in fairness to the Spanish government, the socialist government, they made some commitments before they were elected into power. They came to the region and said that they would try and strike a deal which was beneficial for both sides, and they have kept to their word.
I was surprised to hear, I mean, it's good to hear. I was surprised to hear you saying that a double taxation treaty hadn't existed before between Gibraltar and Spain. Was that because of the linkage with the UK?
No, because they refused to recognize Gibraltar as a state in its own right. So signing an agreement with Gibraltar and conceding on the fact that we have a taxation system which is separate from the UK. Remember, they challenged us when we were part of the EU, saying that Gibraltar couldn't have a separate taxation agreement.
Yes.
There were political undertones. They wanted to say is that we weren't a separate state, completely separate state. Same taxation as the UK. So they challenged us and they failed within the EU. The fact that they've now signed the double taxation agreement, and that's why it's caused so much furore within the right wing elements of the Spanish political establishment, because signing to that double taxation agreement is conceding that Gibraltar has its own taxation system,
okay.
and it dilutes their political claim.
Okay, and it's great to hear that you say that the borders seem to be opening up more. What format is that taking? Does it mean there's more light touch border controls between Spain and Gibraltar?
Well, that is, I think, once the treaty is signed, there will be the Frontex, which is European Coast Guard's agency, will be manning that border because they are effectively responsible for entering the Schengen area. So Gibraltar would have its own immigration and coast guard and borders agents controlling in and out of the territory. But equally, there will be a Frontex, and it's very important to say it is not Spanish border controlled. They are Frontex border, European border controlled, because, you know, and one can understand, to make this work, they need to make sure, you know, who's coming in and out of the Schengen area. So they have to have their own controls too.
So you're saying that will happen once the double taxation treaty is in place?
No. Once the treaty, once the post-Brexit treaty is signed.
Okay.
So they go hand in hand. The double taxation treaty agreement is just waiting for the post-Brexit agreement, including the Schengen, to be rubber stamped, and then everything comes into play.
Okay, great answer. Just to both you and Alex, do you think the stock issues of British products is going to resolve itself anytime soon, or do you think that's going to be an ongoing issue that won't get resolved?
I think we across Europe, and the UK's having problems with exporting some of its products already. Some people are calling these teething issues. Some, other people have got a different point of view. I hope that those issues will be resolved sooner rather than later, in the spirit of goodwill and the trade agreement that was reached.
So the trade agreement would mean that those products should be on the shelves and should be okay. Is there another overlay that's happening that's making it more hard? More difficult?
I think, I mean, when I was in the local supermarket the other day, we've got an Iceland here in Marbella, and basically they were saying over the tannoys that they've got 20 trucks stuck at customs at the moment. So I'm certain that's a paperwork issue, and they're grinding through those issues. And you kind of always expected some teething issues, but let's hope those are resolved soon. Yeah.
I mean, Louise, just for information purposes, Gibraltar has another issue that when the goods arrive at the border, they don't cross the border right now. They have to go to Algeciras and get a ferry. A private enterprise has been set up, and they ferry the goods across by sea. So there's another layer, so you don't just cross the border straight away.
So hopefully that will change. Okay, so any other questions? Anyone else? We'll open it up.
Question for Paul, if I may.
Sure.
Paul, you mentioned about the self-sufficiency route, but I understand for pension lump sum transfers, there's a 2.5% tax. But are there any other constraints on the monies that you can draw down from that pension once you transfer it over to Gibraltar?
No, I mean, if you have a tax-free, I mentioned tax-free lump sums. If you were to reside in Spain, the concept, there's no such thing as a tax-free lump sum. That is something in the UK where you can draw 25% of the value of the pension fund and pay no tax. Gibraltar has a similar rules and regulations. So we have the same tax-free lump sum element. When you come to Gibraltar, then you can continue to draw pension income in a very flexible way, but you haven't got flexible drawdown as you do in the UK. So probably based on the old GAD rules, which is Government Actuarial Department rules, which is based on age and the value of your pension. And roughly, it could be a drawdown of about 5% of the pension value.
So there's a limit on the amount that you can draw down of 5%.
There's no limit as such, but what you find is Gibraltar has an adopted flexible drawdown. Okay. And in the absence of flexible drawdown, they rely on the old rules, which is the GAD rules. And the GAD rules are dependent on age and value of your pension fund. And roughly speaking, it's about 5%. But look, sometimes you might even have discrepancy between pension trustees. But as a general rule, I think what I'm saying here is pretty accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, we'll take last question from Pepe Romanillos.
Hi, Alex and Paul.
Hi,
hope you guys are well. I have a question on currencies. So if I'm going to rock down to Gibraltar later this year, which I hope to do, can I acquire a property or investment using my cryptocurrency wallet?
Oh, that's a really good question, Jose Luis. I have no idea. You know, crypto is like Marmite. Either you like it or you hate it. I happen to be a non-believer. I'm a traditionalist. I believe in there has to be some intrinsic value behind, you know, gold reserves to give validity to crypto. So I have no idea. I don't know how widely adopted the cryptocurrency is and what you can buy and can't buy. But I assume, Jose Luis, that the answer is no. But I can't give you a categorical response right now.
It's just that the industry is changing dramatically in that space, and knowing that Gibraltar is a global centre for blockchain and crypto, I would have thought there's an opportunity there, bearing in mind that Elon Musk has just sent shares rising with a 1.5 billion investment, and now a bank announced yesterday, whose name escapes me, that they're now operating in crypto as an international private bank. I think it might be BNY Mellon, but I'm not sure.
No, I can tell you that Wells Fargo Bank decided to convert some of their capital adequacy reserves, the capital, into crypto, which I think is quite a risky move. And I think people move at different speeds, right? In embracing crypto. You're absolutely right. Gibraltar is a global center for crypto, attracting new businesses all the time. Whether it's widely adopted, I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but you know, it is not my space, but I don't think we're quite there.
So anyway, thank you for that question, Pepe. What is good news is you can still come down to Gibraltar, and if you have got crypto, you can buy a Tesla, right? And you could probably get that delivered via Algeciras into Gibraltar or Marbella, whatever you like.
A word of warning: Tesla is trading at 1,700 times earnings. It is, and it is just about to fall in price. You know, watch this space because it's ridiculously priced.
Well, we've got to be very careful about giving tips here without signing up people to formal declarations and exclusion of liabilities and responsibilities, Paul. So let's not give let's not give top tips advice here, eh?
Yesterday I gave 3 bold predictions for 2021 for investments, and actually that most of the viewers had fallen asleep in Portugal, and they woke up when I spoke about that. Apparently, it was quite interesting. Before then, they were just, you know, snoozing.
All right. Well, listen, thank you ever so much, everyone, for joining us today. If you want to contact us, then you've got our information. You can visit Legal Services in Spain. You can visit Fiduciary Wealth Management and get Gibraltar Residency. You can contact Paul or myself. Thank you very much for joining us. If you want to hear Paul's tips about the future stocks and shares, do contact him. And you know, keep in touch. Do visit our YouTube channels. Have a lovely weekend, and we look forward to seeing you on more videos later on in the year. Buenas tardes.
Thank you, Alex. Buenas tardes. Thank you.